Hail, and welcome to Heathen Hearth, the show where we make recipes inspired by the historic and ethnographic imagination. This week, get ready to decolonize your diet. We're making historic Iroquois winter soup. Iroquoian peoples traditionally reckon descent on the mother's line. This is my wife Maryanne Pearce's great-grandmother, Mary Brant. She is, of course, also an ancestor of my son, Joven, and my daughter, Kadri. To all of you, I dedicate this episode. There is a social movement amongst Indigenous peoples to decolonize their diets. This book, of the same title, does an excellent job of articulating this intention. Indigenous peoples all over the Americas, as well as the First Nations of what is now Canada and the United States, are again following traditional foodways as a way to fight back against the colonialism which has harmed their communities and sought to destroy their cultures. The act of eating as your ancestors did can be a radical act of self-expression and a way to reclaim identity. It can also be very healthy and economically beneficial. First Nations peoples suffer higher rates of diabetes, certain types of cancer, heart disease, and other diet-related illnesses. The root of these illnesses is, of course, poverty, a continuing legacy of colonialism. However, many in the movement to decolonize Indigenous diets also believe that following a diet that emerged in their own homelands is a key to better health. The Haudenosaunee, or people of the longhouse, are commonly referred to as the Iroquois or the Six Nations. They are a confederacy of Indigenous nations whose association has resulted in a similarity of culture and customs. Their original homeland is the northern part of New York State, but these Indigenous peoples now hold sovereign land in the provinces of Ontario and Quebec, as well as New York State. The historical Iroquois diet was centered upon farming for three staple plants, called the Three Sisters. They are maize, which we call corn, winter squash, and climbing beans. There were many varieties of each, with different purposes and different flavors. Sunflowers and sunchokes were also cultivated. Most meat was obtained by hunting. Today's recipe is my construction. I use traditional knowledge collected by F.W. Waugh around the year 1912. I've combined two Onondaga recipes with Mohawk cooking techniques to create this recipe. I expect that this type of dish would have been similar to those prepared by Iroquoian peoples throughout their history. All the way from the Great Law of the Peace, when it was established in 1451, Common Era, up to the turn of the 20th century. What I've been doing here is preparing a buttercup squash for drying. I first needed to peel off the thick skin and de-seed the squash. You need to use a hefty knife for this. I find a Chinese meat cleaver works best, but use whatever you find comfortable. These are the ingredients we're going to be using for this dish. Here's the buttercup squash, which I've just finished thinly slicing. This is the butternut squash, which I previously prepared by slicing thinly, treating with smoke, then drying. It's bone dry. The Iroquoian people stored much of their food in the rafters of their longhouses so that they could dry and be preserved by smoke out of the way of dirt and pests, at least prior to long-term storage. As a result, much of the food would have had a smoky flavor. There are different ways to impart this kind of smokiness. You can use shortcuts like using a smoked salt or using liquid smoke, or you can use wood chips to smoke the ingredients. Here we have dried white-tailed deer my son in common law harvested this fall. It has been treated with smoke and then dried to the consistency of a cracker. I've opted to use liquid smoke as a shortcut because salt is not an authentic historic Iroquoian ingredient, and I'm getting kind of tired of my fire alarm going off when I undertake these cooking experiments. Shake, shake, shake. I put maybe about a teaspoon on during each time that I did this, so 3 teaspoons in total. I prepared all 3 sets of ingredients the same way. This is my Excalibur food dehydrator. This is a top of the line food dehydrator. I highly recommend it, but if you have your own food dehydrator of another brand, you can use that for sure. So here I'm just putting out the butter cup squash. I did the venison and the butternut squash the same way. I also spread them with liquid smoke first. Then I put them on the mesh sheets and just load them up and stick them into the dehydrator. What you want to do is leave as much space as you can between the different levels. I like to put a little bit of space between them and to put them at the top because of course hot air rises. Then you turn your dehydrator on. For jerky, you want to use around 155 degrees Fahrenheit, and for the squash around 135. I used about 16 hours for each, just so they would get really, really dry. You don't want a beef jerky sort of texture. You want something that will crumble in your fingers. Now, I didn't measure how much I put into the dehydrator. I only measured the dry ingredients afterwards. So here are the 4 ingredients that go in. Of course, I've already added the liquid smoke, and there's going to be water too. So I had 25 grams of each of the different squashes and 25 grams of the white-tailed deer. Of course, that's dried grams. And then I had 50 grams of the corn. And then you'll see that in the back. I'm going to talk about that a bit later. So we have 75 grams total of the main ingredients, and then 50 grams of the corn, and that's the proportion you want to have in this meal. It seemed to turn out well. I took all of those 3 ingredients minus the corn, and I crumbled them together into 3 cups of water in the Instant Pot. When you have all your ingredients in the pot, just close the lid, twist it till it's closed. Then put the valve on top all the way to sealing mode. That's by pushing this valve all the way to the back if you're standing in front of the pot. Then you'll turn your pot on and hit manual. And I have 110 minutes, that's how much I want. However, it looks, see it's at low pressure, check that, and I'm gonna put it to high pressure. And then you just have to wait 10 seconds and you'll hear a beep and you will start the cooking process. And I'm going to, we'll come back once it's done. While we're waiting for the Instant Pot to finish cooking, it's time to make the corn dumplings. Now, these corn dumplings are going to be made in the Onondaga style. However, I'm going to shape them like Mohawk bean breads are usually shaped. So here we go. First, I've got my nixtamalized yellow cornmeal here. I have very, very hot water, which I'm going to mix in just a tiny bit at a time so that I can form a dough. This is about 50 grams worth of cornmeal masa. The water was just recently boiled. Now, I have not added any salt or any fat to this. When you're using masa in Mexican cuisine, you usually add lard as well as salt. In some of the Iroquois recipes, they add bear grease, but those are usually only festival foods. Day-to-day foods didn't seem to have much in the way of fats added to the breads. A lot of the breads were boiled or just parch baked sort of on the flames of fire. Another thing about Iroquois food that is very notable is the lack of salt added to it. This was something that the colonists and explorers noted in particular about Iroquois cooking, that they didn't need or add salt to almost anything. That's why the dried butternut squash and dried meat weren't brined beforehand. Oftentimes, if you'd be making jerky in other traditions or dried dried vegetables. You might brine them as a further way to preserve them, but the Iroquois did not appear to have done that until later in the colonial period. I'm adding a bit of cornmeal to the outside of the dough just for working it so that I can get the proper consistency. You notice I just wiped off my hands, and that's because the dough was a little bit too sticky. What you want is a dough that is similar to the dough you'd make for Mexican tortillas, in that it should be, you should feel a little bit of a stick, but it be not come away in your hands. So the dough should remain almost not sticky, but like a really high quality Play-Doh, if you're used to playing with Play-Doh or have kids in your house or remember it from being a kid. All right, that's good. It holds together really well. Okay, so I'm going to move this aside, the water and the spoon. Just put this down for now, and I'll just clean this up later. Just going to bang the cutting board off. All right, so now I'm just making a small snake out of this, and I'll divide it into even pieces. So we have dumplings of the same size. Those look to be about good size. And it's going to make them round, and then we flatten them so that they are slightly flat, sort of discs that are slightly flatter in the middle than they are at the sides, just like that. So I'll complete the rest of these. The cornmeal I'm using is Mexican masa. It is dent corn that is soaked and cooked in an alkaline solution, usually lime water. Iroquois cornmeal would have been made out of flint or dent corn soaked and cooked in an alkaline solution, but made out of hardwood ashes. I've made a very small batch of soup here, one that will probably feed only about 2 people, and the reason I did that was because I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I still have more of all of the ingredients, and next time if I make it again, I might be making it more to modern tastes in that I'd be adding salt and perhaps a few other spices. This first experiment that you're going to see here today is the historic version. I'm going to cover this in plastic wrap. Historically, of course, you wouldn't be doing that. You'd be throwing it in right away, but I want to prep this so that I can not have to rush when I open the Instant Pot. There we go. Now I just have to wait for the Instant Pot to finish cooking. The cooking time has finished. You'll see at the front, it actually says 1 hour and a couple of minutes. We had dinner in between, so I'm opening this a bit late. So it's depressurized, which means that the silver pin has dropped down, so I don't have to worry about steam escaping. But what I'll do is I'll turn it from sealing mode to venting anyways, just in case. Yeah, no sound. And I'm going to take off the lid and see how it's doing. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, the smell's good. It's in very gamey sort of smell. You'll notice it didn't break apart very much. Oh, that's interesting. And the pieces are rather intact. The meat is still a bit hard. So maybe I'll do a bit more cooking. But what I'll do is I'll do this next set of cooking with the dumplings in. So these are the dumplings we made earlier, prepared earlier, I should say. That were corn masa. I'm just going to drop those in. Probably could have made more corn dumplings, but what I was thinking was I probably wouldn't have all the soup at one time. So if I had leftover soup, what I could do is reheat it again and make new dumplings and cook it in that in the soup once again. So I'm going to put the lid back on it. Turn it back to sealing mode. So it had been 1 hour and 25 minutes we left it. I'm going to turn it off. And now we're going to put it to manual mode.
And I'm going to take it down from 45 minutes. It doesn't need much time now for the dumplings and the meat to cook the rest of the way through. So I'm going to use 10 minutes at high pressure. We have let the steam naturally release. And as you can see, the pin is still up though, however. So we're going to turn it from sealing mode to venting mode. And just let the last of that steam release itself.
If you happen to make a bigger batch and you have liquid coming out of this vent, remember you can always throw a tea towel or a cloth over top of it to protect from splattering.
All right, the pin has dropped, so that means it's safe to open the Instant Pot. That looks great. It looks like the dumplings have gotten a little bit plumper and larger. So I'll put that into bowls and we'll try it out. After waiting all that time, and it's not that much time when you use an Instant Pot, we have our Iroquois winter soup, made with an Onondaga recipe and techniques from Mohawk dishes. So here we have it. We're going to be eating it with a sharpened stick. In this case, it's a really sharp Japanese chopstick that I'm repurposing. That's nice and wood. Also, we have a wooden spoon. And the reason we are eating with these implements is in the ethnographic work that I read, it said that historically the Iroquoian peoples ate with a single stick, a spoon, or their fingers. So we're going to try that ourselves. So Baz, how about you start eating it and I'll talk about what you're eating. So you are spearing there. That's a cornmeal masa dumpling, very plain, should be quite starchy.
That's like a ball of dough.
It's like a ball of dough. Yeah, keep you going if you know, have to canoe somewhere or something.
For sure.
Do a little bit of gardening.
That's really filling, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then there's also too, you have the little dark bits that should be a little bit chewy. Those are you can use the spoon for that if you want.
I speared one.
Oh, there you did. Those are white-tailed deer. That's been smoked and dried.
It's like a jerky.
Yeah, but it's just smoke because the Iroquois almost never used salt in their cooking. They had a very sweet palate, so a lot of the vegetables they bred for sweetness, such as corn and squash. And then they also had maple syrup too, and maple sugar. So a lot of the foods they ate were sweetened rather than salted.
Yep, the smoke flavor really comes out.
Oh yeah, cool. I'm gonna try it now. It's like, oh wow.
Yeah, and it's
really
a
smoky.
sweet too.
Yeah, it's got a bit of sweetness. In all the recipes, it didn't have extra sweetness. Usually there was a separate recipe with maple syrup, but if I was next time when I'm going to reheat this, I think I might try some maple syrup in it. I think that would be good. And the cornmeal dumplings, these ones are really, really plain. Later on, the Iroquoian people started to make more cornbreads that were leavened with like baking powder and stuff like that. As soon as they got it, they started using it. And they also started, when they were more wealthy, they started to add more fat to the dumplings too, so that fluffs them up a bit. So originally they would have been little pucks like this, but I think the stuff from the 1800s, when I'm saying more recent, I'm saying like stuff from the early 1900s rather than earlier. Yeah, it has a really dark flavor. The squash, there's two kinds of squash in it, butternut squash and buttercup squash, but they taste almost like starchy. You can't, the flavor of them really blends in.
I was gonna ask if that was squash.
Yeah. There's two kinds there, and they were dried and smoked as well. So the reason I call this a winter soup is because although squash can keep quite a while, what they used to do was smoke this, cut the squash into very thin pieces, and they'd smoke it above their fires the same way that they would with the meat. And so later in the winter, after the fresher provisions had been eaten, then you would be cooking this kind of meal just before before springtime or the thaw, right?
Yeah, you can't taste the smoke so much in the squash, but
No.
but it's definitely in the deer.
And the squash really, sometimes when we cook squash nowadays, like in a lot of the North American recipes, it turns out really sweet. This is the same squash, but it doesn't taste all that sweet. I guess it's because there's no other ingredients added, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, no.
It's got a really interesting texture too when combined with if you get a spoonful of the deer as well. The two go really well together.
Yeah. Well, I was worried that I wouldn't like it because it didn't have any salt, has no onions or other kind of vegetables. This is actually, it's basically a 3-ingredient dish, and it works really well. It's quite delicious. So those Iroquois, historic Iroquois, really knew what they were doing, and it's a wonderful cuisine, and I look forward to exploring it further. So everybody, you make it yourself, decolonize your diet, and I'll see you on the next episode of Heathen Hearth. I hope you liked that video. Please give it a thumbs up down below, and I'd love to hear your comments as well. Also too, remember to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you get notifications. You might like this video as well, so check it out. There's also playlists, so you can check those out as well. Until next time, keep cooking.